Our whole world has been under several forms of mind control for a very long time now. Each year over the last 10 years seems to get more insane. And while the insanity and wickedness increase, we are beginning to see very clear lines being drawn. A massive amount of our population is under full mind control. From chemicals in our water and our food to mind control programming on the big screen. It's hard to avoid this beast system as it grows. For many years on this channel, I've shown you examples of predictive programming in media, also of social engineering. We know them by their signs and symbols. That's another phenomenon we've really seen explode over the last several years. People all around the world are realizing we're seeing the same symbols in so many movies and TV shows, even corporate logos. And of course, there's a reason for that. This beast system is manifesting at an accelerated rate. These symbols have been used by people in this system for a very long time to maintain control over us, to program our minds. But that beast is breaking out of the cage. It's harder for them to hide this kind of a thing now. It's becoming much more obvious. Unfortunately, not to everybody. I recently watched this movie from 2012 called It's a Disaster. After watching it, I realized this is a perfect example of how they put the magic in movies. So let's get started with It's a Disaster from 2012. The main star of the movie is Hollywood actor David Cross. David Cross is married to actress Amber Tamblyn. I covered this couple in a video I did a while back about the rise of witchcraft in Hollywood. Amber Tamblyn is a witch. After the suicide of Anthony Bourdain just a few years ago, Amber Tamblyn outed herself as a witch, even encouraging her followers to conjure up a protection spell for the girlfriend at the time, Asia Argento. And this ties into one of my own theories about the massive amounts of so-called atheists in Hollywood. I covered this in detail in my previous video, but I do believe that many of these actors and actresses that claim to be atheists are actually Satanists. They even went so far as naming their newborn child Mustard Witch. So in the film It's a Disaster, they have many of the common, what we call Illuminati symbols, or satanic symbols, and it also ties in with the actual story itself. When it comes to these types of symbols being placed in movies, I believe it comes from two different sources. On one hand, I believe this can happen in the spiritual, that this can actually be worked through people. But on the other hand, there are those that do this on purpose, and they fully understand what they're doing. There's an intention here. So in this film, It's a Disaster, I'm going to show you some of the symbolism. It's very obvious from the beast system, or satanic symbolism, and how it so obviously ties into the story here. The basic story is there's a handful of couples meeting for an afternoon lunch. During that lunch, the world starts falling apart outside. So as the story continues and they find out more and more about how the world is falling apart outside, we come to find out that David Cross is a Christian. And at the end of the film, we find out that his character wants to kill all the other characters so they can go meet Jesus together. Obviously, he's playing the crazy Christian. And obviously, movies and stories like this make Christians look like lunatics. Well, he is married to a witch, and he also claims to be an atheist. So whether he's an actual atheist or Satanist or witch, I'm not exactly sure, but that doesn't really matter, because the spirit that's working through him in this film is the same that's in his wife that's the witch, or any of the other filmmakers or writers behind this particular piece of propaganda. You'll see them mention the devil horns at one point here. You'll also see a symbol for the falling star. It'll actually be a pentagram on fire. There's also a painting in one of the main rooms in this film that the filmmakers definitely wanted you to have your eyes on. In this picture you have several of the most common Freemasonic or Illuminati type symbols, if you will. The all-seeing eye, the pyramid, the checkerboard floor. And then I'll show you a few clips of David Cross at the end portraying himself as the lunatic Christian trying to kill everybody else so they can go meet Jesus.
Cleanso?
Score of what game?
The UT game.
Hook 'em horns.
Oh, right. No, that's the devil sign.
You guys go.
Tracy, are you familiar with the rapture? I love you, Tracy, and I love your friends. I have huge love for them. And I want to help with their judgment. I would like to ask you to sit beside me at the marriage supper of the Lamb.
Another example of that rise of witchcraft we're seeing comes to us in the form of Marina Abramovic. The world really found out about Marina Abramovic once the WikiLeaks were released. We started finding connections between her and some of the most powerful politicians in America. It's my opinion that Marina Abramovic is a next-level witch, a powerful witch who has connections with powerful politicians and the so-called Hollywood elite. Even here we see her displaying a fairly new phenomenon. Over the last several years, many politicians and celebrities have been seen with this mysterious black eye. And it's happening so frequently that many people are starting to notice. Now, WikiLeaks was huge as far as the awakening goes. So much came out of WikiLeaks. This is where we learned about Comet Ping Pong, Mr. Elefantis, what they call Pizzagate. This is when we started to learn about their hunger for children. These people crave children. They crave their blood, they crave their flesh, they crave their bodies. So it's interesting that we find this same idea playing out in our theaters. Before I show you that example, let's take a look at this right here. You're looking at Podesta. He's good friends with Hillary Clinton. Huge connections politically here in America. And we see his symbolism. And this symbolism goes back to the Antichrist. All of these people are signaling each other, because they are all of the same satanic hive mind. They know what's coming. The image we were just looking at of Podesta is the same image you're seeing here with Chet Hanks. Different symbolism, but the same entity. And remember that this video went viral all around the world, because this is when we first learned that allegedly Chet Hanks' father, Tom Hanks, and his mother both had coronavirus. And we see how much of a sham that this crown virus has turned into, the plandemic. So this is another example of them signaling to each other, all of the same satanic hive mind. And now you see the same thing here. There's a new series of commercials for Smirnoff, some kind of an alcoholic drink. And it features this Hollywood actor, Dave Bautista. And of course you see he has that same Illuminati pyramid, all-seeing eye, sun symbol behind it that Chet Hanks has, same spot. Now here's another commercial, once again for Smirnoff, and once again displaying that all-seeing eye with the sun, which is a symbol for Lucifer. So once again, it's a signal. This is a satanic hive mind we're dealing with, and they are signaling each other with the symbols. The Antichrist is near. So over the last few years, as we're seeing more and more of this truth come out about child trafficking, child sex, we see what happened with Epstein. There really is an awakening taking place. So as this is taking place in the real world, we can also see it reflected on the silver screen. The movie Dr. Sleep is supposed to be a continuation of The Shining, both books by Stephen King. And in Dr. Sleep, the primary enemy is essentially a witch who hunts for children. Her and her group, all of the same satanic hive mind, feed off of children.
Breathe deep. Honey, it's the special ones that taste best.
I should get back to my phone.
No, stay a while. See more magic.
Here's an example of a recent television show that was all about that satanic hive mind, about that dividing line between humanity. You're either controlled by God or you're controlled by the devil. This also shows that rise of the satanic hive mind, how these demons are spreading. More and more people are becoming possessed. It's an ever-encroaching evil. And we see the same thing reflected in our modern-day world. Just turn on the TV. So once again, we have that mirror effect. While this is happening in our reality, more and more people are becoming vicious, cruel, angry, hateful, violent. We see it reflected on the silver screen, but perhaps with a bit more truth, connecting this with Satan, demons, fallen angels. In Season 2 of Castle Rock, a cult that existed hundreds of years ago is resurrected in current times. We also find another one of those anomalies I've discussed for many years in this TV show, and that's the black goo. The black goo plays a part in the transformation from human to one of these hive mind Satanists. And their leader, of course, is a fallen angel.
It is the world she gave us that he gave us. We waited 400 years. Now we know why. People have forgotten. This land belongs to the angel. Now we take it back in his name. We must protect our new place in this old, rotting world. Then we will take the rest of it from those who would oppose us. We will see this fight through to the end. The end of them is the beginning of us.
It's a door to other years, other nows, other dimensions. Our angel travels between them.
Now here's another example. It's a television show called Evil. And personally, I'm surprised how much truth is actually in this TV show. They talk about the same topics we've talked about here for many years. About the rise of evil in our world. About the rise of possessions. Also about that dividing line between the sheep and the goats, or the wheat and the tares.
What?
Matthew 13. The kingdom of heaven is like a man who sowed good seed in his field. But while everyone was sleeping, his enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat. These are the weeds, the eggs. The slaughter of the innocents isn't killing 2-year-olds. It's corrupting the eggs.
Now I want to bring this from the silver screen and the small screen back to the real world. Even this most recent event with Floyd is connected to Osiris. I see this as another signal, that hive mind working together. And Osiris is our connection to the Antichrist. This situation was a Masonic ritual, or you could call it an Illuminati ritual, maybe a higher end, a Masonic type ritual. It actually occurred on East 38th Street, which is on the same street as the Prince Hall Grand Lodge. It's only half-mile away. And this is a Masonic lodge for black people specifically. Some people call it the Boule. George Floyd's family hired Benjamin Crump as their lawyer, who is listed as a famous Prince Hall Freemason. And George Floyd's twin friend, ex-NBA player Steven Jackson, is also connected to that Masonic fraternity. In the third degree of Freemasonry, the Masons are introduced to a character called Hiram Abiff. In Masonic lore, he's considered the builder of Solomon's temple, and he's nicknamed the widow's son. In Masonic lore, Hiram Abiff is murdered by 3 rough individuals. This ritual is acted out by the Master Masons, which involves staging the murder of the candidate. During his arrest, it was 3 police officers in total at one point that were kneeling on George Floyd's body. Derek Chauvin was the officer who took the blame for the death. He's originally charged with a 3rd-degree murder, fitting, once again, for a 3rd-degree Masonic ritual. Also consider that the ritual occurred on Memorial Day, which honors those killed defending our country. During Masonic rituals, Masons will kneel before the grave of Hiram Abiff as a memorial. In solidarity with the BLM protests, Nancy Pelosi, alongside fellow Democrats, wore an African kente cloth and kneeled 8 minutes and 46 seconds at the Capitol. If you add 8, 4, and 6 together, you can break it down numerically. It adds up to 18, which is actually 666. And if you didn't know, Hiram Abiff is merely the Masonic version of a much older legend, that of Isis and Osiris, the basis of the Egyptian mysteries. Also, according to certain Egyptian legends, Osiris died while being locked in a golden casket. This represents the death of the sun. Osiris is the black sun or midnight sun. This is in contrast to Horus, who's the risen sun, Ra, the noonday sun, and Set, the setting sun. Ultimately, these are all symbols for the same entity, for Lucifer, for the sun god. Similar to the sun god Osiris, George Floyd was buried in a golden casket. His body was transported by a horse-drawn carriage, which is yet another solar symbol, as many solar deities are often depicted riding a chariot across the skies. I made this video 3 years ago, first the statues and then the churches, and it's beginning to look like 3 years later we've arrived. I've stated for years that this is an Antichrist spirit, and it starts with the statues, but it doesn't stop there. These people, this hive mind, are being controlled by an anti-human force. 3 years ago, I wondered how long will it take before they tire of the statues and come for the churches, or ultimately they come for us, for Christians. Here's a really good example of the inversion, or that mirror world that we live in. As they're tearing down statues of our history, they're erecting these satanic statues. And now we're beginning to see those headlines. Tear them down. BLM says Jesus statues are white supremacy. Always have been. Here's another one. Offensive imagery of St. Michael defeating Satan is reminiscent of George Floyd. From magic in the movies to rituals in public places, all of the mind control, all of the chemicals in the food. The movie magic has only been a part of this psychological operation. This beast system throws everything at us, from mind control in the media to ritualistic public events. There's been a lot of programming, and we're living at a time now where we're seeing mass portions of the population heavily programmed, and now they're acting out. They're taking it to the streets. They're causing damage. They're breaking things. They're setting things on fire. They're hurting people. This is the Antichrist spirit, and it is rising. So that's all I had for you now, but thanks as always for watching my video, and truly I hope you take care out there, and I'll talk to you a little later.
You know, I just want to share with you one really funny opinion. But there is in Lapland, there is a group of the shamans there who do something called collective dreaming. They will go together in seclusion and do the rituals with, eating very little food and being in a solitude for a long time. And they will go and dream the dreams. And the dream have to be collective, same dream. So coming out of this dream, once of the shaman told me that actually the best thing happened in this planet right now is the Trump to be the president. I said, how is this possible? It's the best thing to happen. He said, yes, because he's so irrational, he's so crazy. That's actually create that awakening, that we finally wake up. Because before it will be another guy and everything looks similar. But he's so different than anything else. So he's the magician who waking us up. What do you think about that? That kind of theory.